If you've tried 2 or 3 of these and bounced off all of them within a few weeks, you're not lacking discipline. You're chasing the wrong variable entirely. And honestly, nobody selling you the next plan has an incentive to tell you that. Here's the fact that changes everything about how I think about this. Stanford researchers who ran a head-to-head diet comparison found that adherence, not diet type, was the strongest driver of results. Participants who stuck closest to either plan lost the most weight, regardless of which specific plan they were actually following. The diet itself mattered far less than whether people could realistically stay on it week after week. That single finding is the entire reason this experiment exists. I didn't just want to know which diet worked in some abstract research sense. I wanted to find out, on myself, why some approaches felt sustainable within days and others fell apart almost immediately, even over the short span of just 1 week each. Quick disclaimer before we start. Rapid diet switching isn't something I'd recommend as a long-term strategy, and nothing in this video is medical advice. This was a short, structured content experiment designed to surface patterns quickly, not a program for you to copy week for week at home. Week 1. Keto. Keto delivered the fastest visible change on the scale of any week, and the fastest burnout of the entire 5-week experiment. Science or proof? Research comparing ketogenic diets to lower-fat approaches consistently shows faster initial weight loss on keto, partly driven by water loss as glycogen stores empty out over the first several days of carbohydrate restriction. I dropped noticeably on the scale by day 4, and it genuinely felt like I'd stumbled onto the answer everyone talks about. But I also felt foggy, irritable by day 6, and structuring every single meal around avoiding carbs, including navigating a friend's dinner party that week, became exhausting fast. The initial excitement wore off long before the week itself did. Keto looked like the clear winner on paper by day 4. What happened in week 2 completely flipped that early assumption on its head. Week 2, low-fat claim. Low-fat was the easiest diet to plan on paper and, somewhat surprisingly, the hardest one to actually feel satisfied on in practice, meal after meal. Long-term comparisons between low-fat and lower-carb diets tend to show similar weight outcomes over time. The meaningful difference isn't really the macro split itself, it's how naturally each individual person ends up eating less on that particular structure. I was rarely hungry between meals on this plan, which sounds like a clear win on the surface. But I was hungry again within an hour after eating. Almost every single time, regardless of how large the portion had been. That's the diet that made me want to quit the entire experiment by Wednesday afternoon. Here's a question worth asking yourself honestly. Has a diet ever made you technically full on paper, but still craving more 20 minutes later? That was low-fat week for me. Every single day without a single exception. Week 3, Mediterranean claim. Mediterranean-style eating was the least dramatic of all 5 weeks by every measure, and by far the easiest to sustain without constantly thinking about it. Science or proof? Long-term diet trials that follow people well beyond the initial weeks consistently find that balanced, less restrictive approaches hold up better over time than more extreme plans, even when the early results look comparatively less impressive on a chart. I didn't feel like I was on a diet at any single point that week. I ate fish, olive oil, vegetables, whole grains, the occasional glass of wine with dinner, and I never once thought seriously about quitting or cheating. It just felt like normal, relaxed eating, with a slightly clearer sense of intention behind each meal. But the diet that actually built the most muscle out of all 5 wasn't this one either, as genuinely good as it felt day to day. Week 4, high protein claim. High protein was the best week for my training performance by a clear margin, full stop, no close second among the 5. Higher protein intake during a calorie deficit is well established in the research for helping preserve lean muscle mass, which is exactly what most people fear losing the moment they start cutting calories aggressively for any length of time. My lifts didn't drop this week, unlike every other week in the experiment, without exception. I recovered faster between training sessions and felt noticeably stronger in the gym by day 5, to the point where I actually looked forward to training that week instead of dreading it walking in. So 5 diets in, 4 weeks down, which one actually won overall by the end? The answer surprised me more than any single week's results did on their own. Week 5. Carb cycling claim. Carb cycling was the most complicated diet to plan by a wide margin, and it gave me the least additional benefit over what Mediterranean or high protein had already quietly delivered. More complex nutrient timing strategies haven't reliably shown superior fat loss results compared to simpler, calorie-matched approaches in the research. The added complexity mostly adds effort and mental overhead, not meaningfully better outcomes. I spent more mental energy planning this single week's meals than all 4 previous weeks combined, color-coding high and low-carb days, cross-checking them against my training schedule, for a result that genuinely wasn't meaningfully better than the 2 weeks that came directly before it. By the end of 5 full weeks, the diets that felt sustainable, Mediterranean and high protein, were also, not coincidentally at all, the ones I performed and felt best on physically and mentally. The diet that looked most extreme and impressive on paper, keto, gave the fastest scale change and the fastest burnout of the entire experiment. That pattern held up consistently from start to finish, and it genuinely wasn't close once I laid all 5 weeks side by side. Before I tell you which diet I'm actually sticking with going forward, the real lesson from this entire experiment isn't about food at all, and it's the part almost every diet video skips completely. Here's exactly what to do this week. Step 1. Stop asking, which diet is best, and start asking, which one could I realistically do for a full year without resenting it? Sustainability beats optimization every single time, and the long-term research backs that up clearly and repeatedly. Step 2. Pick a moderate, less restrictive structure as your default starting point, rather than the most extreme option available. A Mediterranean-style pattern, vegetables, lean proteins, whole grains, healthy fats, is easy to maintain long-term and is backed by decades of research, not just a passing trend cycle online. Step 3. Add a protein target on top of whatever eating style you ultimately choose, regardless of which one it is. This was the one single variable that consistently protected my strength and recovery across all 5 very different weeks, no matter what else changed around it. Step 4. Give any new approach at least 3 to 4 full weeks before judging whether it's actually working for you long-term. 1 week tells you how it feels in the moment. It doesn't tell you whether you can genuinely sustain it once the initial novelty wears off completely. Step 5. If a diet requires constant willpower just to get through a normal, ordinary day without struggling, treat that as useful data, not a personal failure or evidence that you lack discipline. Cross it off your list calmly, without guilt, and move on to the next option on your list. This isn't about finding a perfect diet, and there probably isn't one sitting out there waiting to be discovered. It's about finding the one you don't have to fight every single day just to stay on. 5 diets in 5 weeks taught me that the best diet was never some secret formula hiding in a research paper somewhere. It was simply whichever one I could actually stick to without dreading it every single morning. If this reframed how you think about dieting, the next video is going to completely change how you think about calorie deficits and why they stall out even when you're doing everything right on paper. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it,